Good evening. It is 7:02 and I am going to call this meeting to order. I'd ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would ask for a roll call of attendance for the board members in case there are any people online that I am unaware of.
Frank Treglia,
Beth Campbell.
Nick Vieira. Steve Carr.
Tanya Galpin.
Matt Van Ormer.
Hearing no one else, I'm going to assume that we are the only members in attendance. Thank you. If I could have an approval of the agenda.
Carr, vote to approve the agenda dated August 18th, 2025 as presented.
Nate Vieira, second.
Any discussion or comment? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. The board welcomes public participation in accordance with the rules of common courtesies and bylaws of the board 9325 meeting conduct. 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. No boisterous conduct shall be permitted. Persistence in boisterous conduct shall be grounds for termination of that person's privilege to address the board. The chairperson may clear the room so that the board members may continue the meeting. No oral presentation shall include charges, complaints against any Board of Education employee, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified by name. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by their comments. While it is not the board's intent to stifle public comment, speakers should be aware that if their statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, the speaker may be held legally responsible. Speakers unsure of the legal ramification of what they are about to say are urged to consult first with their legal advisor. Per the August 2016 Policy Committee meeting, responses to speakers will be in the form of a written letter from the board chairperson, and that letter will be attached to meeting minutes. Speakers will not receive a verbal reply to public comment during a meeting. Did any members of the public wish to address the board? You can come forward to this microphone over here, please.
Okay. Good evening, Chairperson Fainer and members of the board. My name is Erica Sample, and I live at 80 Edwin Lane here in Thomaston. I'm here tonight to share my deep concern about a recent classroom placement decision involving my daughter Abigail, who is about to begin kindergarten at Black Rock. On July 21st, we were told that Abigail's original placement, carefully chosen by her preschool teacher, who knows her pet best, was being changed. The reason? A distant family relation to her kindergarten teacher, a connection we never knew about and that has no bearing on her education. There were no academic, behavioral, or disciplinary concerns. This change was made only to accommodate adult preferences, not to meet a child's needs. Abigail has spent her summer talking about her teacher, her friends, and even the class pet. She is excited and ready. To take that away now is unfair. And let me be clear, no one who resides at 80 Edwin Lane has had a personal relationship with this teacher before, and we will not after the fact. There is no real conflict here. When Abigail was in pre-K 3, she was accidentally hit in the head with a metal gardening hoe during recess. That same evening, the superintendent personally called to check on her. I was very appreciative and grateful for that phone call. It showed compassion, care, and a sense of community that makes Thomaston so special. She even noted how understanding I was, saying that many parents might not have been given that situation. As a teacher myself, I know accidents happen, and I always pride myself to try and see the other side. But this is not an accident. This is a choice, and it's one that puts adult convenience above a child's best interest. The superintendent's response cited 3 policies in our email exchanges. Policy 6152 requires classroom decisions be based on educational considerations only. That standard was not followed here. Policy 4118.13 addresses conflict of interest, but none exist here. Policy 5111 guarantees parental involvement, yet we were excluded entirely. Abigail's placement was thoughtful based on her learning style, social emotional needs, and peer compatibility. Overturning it without an educational reason undermines trust, lacks transparency, and sends the message that personal concerns matter more than students. As of right now, Abigail still doesn't know about this change. I understand, like you just said, your process is to respond with a written letter following public comment. I ask you to reinstate her original placement and to do so quickly, not for me, but for her. Abigail deserves to carry the same joy she's held all summer, talking about her teacher, her friends, and that classroom pet, into her very first day of kindergarten. That joy should not be replaced with confusion or feelings of being unwanted over a decision based solely on her last name, a factor that has nothing to do with her education and everything to do with adult convenience. Abigail deserves better. If you as a board allow adult convenience to outweigh a child's needs, then no family can trust this process. I urge you to please put Abigail first. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to speak this evening.
Was there anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair Finer, fellow board members, everyone listening tonight, thank you for your time. My name is Nate Vieira. My address is 131 Thomaston Circle, and I'm a member of the Board of Education. I'd like to spend some time today reflecting on some recent positive developments regarding our schools that have taken place since our last regular meeting held 2 months ago. This board and this community together have faced many challenges before. It wasn't too long ago when 2 budget referendums failed in a row. Those were hard moments, not just for our schools, but for our town as a whole. But instead of giving up, we came together. We built something new, a voter outreach effort designed to connect with our families, friends, and neighbors. That outreach program, your program, was the turning point. It brought our community back into the conversation, and the results were astounding. Voter turnout increased by over 50%, and this time, over 60% of voters said yes. That wasn't just a victory for our schools, that was a victory for Thomaston. I'll never forget sitting at work on the edge of my seat throughout that day, just wondering how it would go. But when I drove back into town, I knew. I saw families walking into the polls, parents holding their children by the hand or in their arms. That image told me everything I needed to know. The clock town knew that the time was now to invest in the future, our children's future. For that reason, I stand today to thank those who made this possible. I thank our amazing PTA, including Kate Williams and Christina Glick, who did not waver in standing up for our kids. I thank our dedicated parents, those who showed up to canvass, and many of whom emailed me asking for voter lists and got to work. I thank our extraordinary teachers and our devoted staff who on and off the clock always put our students first. I thank our elected officials, such as Rich Soleo and Matt Van Ormer, who showed up to canvass the voter list and those who did so remotely. And of course, I thank our loving community who stood up and showed up in record numbers to bring it home and get this done. This victory belongs to all of you. This is the spirit that must carry us forward, because if there's one lesson here, it's that the Board of Education must be forward-facing and deeply active in the community. We cannot sit back and expect the people we serve to come to us. We have to meet the public where they are, whether that be at community events, at local venues, and yes, on social media. And with that with the successful vote, the recent town meeting, greenlighting our feasibility study, that lesson is true now more than ever. The recommendations that come from this study will determine the trajectory of our school system for decades to come. That's why public feedback and community steering cannot be optional. They are nothing short of essential. The successful implementation of this study's findings will not just be about the board leading the way, but about the entire town of Thomaston guiding the path forward. Because in my view, if we keep this spirit alive, if we keep working together, listening and moving forward as one, then I have no doubt we will enter the dawn of a golden age for our golden bears. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving forward, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Steve Carr, vote to approve the regular meeting minutes dated June 9th, 2025 as presented.
Nate Viera, second.
Questions or corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Steve Carr, vote to approve the special joint meeting minutes dated July 1st, 2025 as presented.
Nate Viera, second.
Any corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Steve Carr, vote to approve the special joint meeting minutes dated July 15th, 2025 as presented.
Nate Viera, second.
Any corrections? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Next, I'd like to give a hearty thank you to our summer custodial crew. We had these dedicated individuals working throughout the whole summer to prepare our buildings and grounds to receive the students back next week. And we are very grateful for their hard work. So thank you very much to all of them. Okay, we have no presentations tonight. Our student representatives, although Mr. Hungerford is here, he is not required to do a report as we are still on summer break. That is not necessary, but thanks for the offer, Steve. Moving on, we have our progress report on the 2025-2026 goals for the Board of Education and the superintendent. Tanya, did you have any updates from the 150th committee?
Our Family Fun Day was a huge success over the summer, and be on the lookout. Tickets for the gala, which will be November 8th, from 6 PM to 11 PM at the Grand Oak Villa will be going on sale. And that's all I have. And that's like the big end of it.
Thank you. We have I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Oh. We have the 24-25 fourth quarter honor roll as presented. The response to public comments from the June 9th regular meeting as presented. Our Education Partner of the Year invitation as presented. Next up is the senior prank incident. So the investigation into the events of June 3rd, 2025 was undertaken in consultation with the board attorney. Policy 9125 gives the chairperson of the board the ability to contact the board attorney regarding legal matters. In order to deliver a timely and fiscally responsible response, I worked with and received the board attorney's approval on the final report submitted transparently and openly at the June 9th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. This report and the subsequent discussion by the board concluded the issue. This past week, I received an email from a board member who seems to think that the results of the investigation were not fully relayed to the board and requested particular aspects of the investigation. The report submitted included all relevant information gathered during the investigation and was reviewed and approved by the board's attorney. And I repeat, all relevant information was reviewed and approved by the board's attorney and is included in the report submitted on June 9th, 2025. This incident occurred during the last school year and has no bearing on the upcoming school year operations and policies. If a board member thinks that the information is missing from this report, now is the time to address this matter.
Tanya Galpin, I have a question. In our policy, it says that any investigation shall be done with a committee. Was there a committee formed to perform this investigation? The committee is members of the board.
No, there was not. As I said, I acted under policy 9125 with the board's attorney.
And also just to let everyone know that this was an initiative that the chairperson took on her own. This was not a request from board members. So I think that might be a difference as why there might not have been a committee. It was just her initiative to look into this.
So you might have been on certain emails, but I personally had emailed Roxy a few times back in June and July requesting well, information. Primarily, I didn't know it was a legal issue to begin with. And again, with what Tanya said, that, and practice per policy would be that not one sole board member has the authority to do an investigation.
I undertook this investigation because there were wild accusations being made against the district. And in order to protect the district, I contacted the attorney and this was his recommendation. I got one email from you on June 12th and nothing else until last week, Beth. There,
I guess my question would be to the board is this how they want to proceed with investigations that need to happen in the future? That it's done by one person on the board, or would you recommend committee?
Steve Carr, I think it is situational based on time allotments. If it's, I mean, for example, during the summer with our limited meetings, if it's something that needs a board approval, but it's something of a special meeting or a emergency type of thing, I don't know if there's anything in the policy that regulates how the procedure needs to be done. That could be something discussed at a policy committee meeting.
Yeah, in terms of how the board would handle matters, just in terms investigatory matters going forward. I mean, I don't know what number policy or if you have it, Tanya, the one you just referenced. I mean, there. Well, if we have two policies saying two different things, the policy committee would look into that. And if we wanted to set a norm going forward, we would pass it through policy committee and then have the board as a whole vote on it in a regular meeting. Well, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to the memorandum from Superintendent Costs for the 25-26 spending restrictions.
Roxy, this is Steve Carr. In regards to this, should because this was discussed during the budget meeting, would you like me to field this question? Okay, we had a memorandum had gone out in regards to the budget, and there was a recommendation for a spending freeze memo that to be sent out, and that was done. One issue that I wanted to bring up because of this is in relation to the Board of Ed's meetings. If they extend beyond normal time allotments, there's overtime for the janitorial staff to keep it open. So there's two recommendations on here to either allow or not allow. If we don't allow that additional spending for overtime, then we have to set a precedence that our meetings end specifically at a certain time, and either a special meeting needs to be taken care of, even if it's for 15 minutes. It either needs to be done or our next meeting scheduled for approval. So this was the point to have a discussion with the budget freeze. Everyone's talking about feasibility and every penny counting kind of thing. So if we're going to show our support of it, we can't be a rule breaker of it. So that's why this was presented for that spending freeze specifically regarding the overtime for against our budget.
Tanya Galpin, what time does the custodial staff end shift? 9?
So any part of that half an hour, they get paid for after.
Okay,
So it would be best for us to assume 5 or 9 would be safe time. It's 9 o'clock, it's 9:30. So I would say instead of picking a specific time, we should say, if you are thinking, you should say no later than 5 minutes before the end of shift. And then on those nights, I can announce who's on shift. So for example, in basketball season, we may have already someone on shift until 10. Because there's basketball. So I can announce it, we'll know we have to leave by 5.
okay. Oh, because that was gonna be like my question was if the hours are like moved. Because in that kind of sense, if we know we're gonna have a heavy agenda, why couldn't we move the meeting to 6 versus 7 also? And just bump it up versus later?
Because we're also open to paying for the time where no one would be here. If it's just a matter of, the question is, we've had meetings, especially with special meetings extended, that go well beyond an anticipated hour.
Right,
So this is the point of,
just making them stay later.
We can move it forward an hour, but it would have to be called a special meeting because our schedule is what calls it a regular meeting. So if we anticipate a long agenda, it would be wise for us to put out a message that says our regular meeting would have been at 7, but it's going to be tonight at 6. And we'd have to give enough notice for the public to be aware, and that's 48 hours.
Have to move policy.
Yes, we'd have to move policy up or else we wouldn't have enough discussion time potentially.
And
in
we would have to
policy.
resend the virtual meetings to update everyone's calendar that's partaking. So there's a lot of moving parts on here. This discussion is, but no, well, I'm not saying we can't make it happen. This discussion is about, do we allow the overtime or do we set a precedence that there is the time restriction?
My question on this is, haven't we voted on this before in last spending? So we have to renew it because that's one of the reasons that this is coming up again?
It's not just that we are initiating a spending freeze, and feasibility budget is well, is a hot enough topic of understanding. There are questions. We want to be transparent. We want to make sure we cross every T, dot every I's. We don't want to say, oh yeah, well, we approved this years ago when we didn't have 2 referendums against the budget. So this is trying to show our consciousness to the public and transparency.
Question I have for Superintendent Cost. In terms of like meetings regarding the feasibility study, over time, that would still be paid out of our coffers. That wouldn't be paid out of the money set aside for feasibility. That would just still come from us, correct?
Correct. So feasibility funds are just for the actual study getting paid to the firm, not to exceed $111,000. Any overtime that's related to a long night of a meeting would come from our coffers.
Awesome. Just wanted to make it clear. Thank you.
Beth Campbell makes a motion, vote to approve that the Board of Education, due to the spending freeze memo issued by Superintendent Costs, not allow the allocation of overtime pay for custodial staff at regular, special, and emergency meetings shall end 10 minutes prior to the custodian's regular work shift.
Tanya Galpin, second.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'd like to reemphasize the point of the shift. Like again, during basketball season, we might end up with a little bit of a buffer zone there. So as soon as I'm aware, either I or I will have Michelina send out to the board what the end of that shift is so that we can keep a timer set to remind us 10 minutes before that we need to leave. Okay. And if there are heavy presentations, I will either put them to our subcommittee meetings so that the longer presentation can be in a subcommittee and the shorter presentation can be here. Or we can record presentations like we did. Jennifer did that once for us as well, so that if we needed to go and hear the full presentation, we don't have to necessarily hear the whole presentation here, but it's available for people to listen to.
Other question. Oh, Frank, if you want to go.
I just want to, what Steve said before, if we have a special meeting, I do not think we can continue a regular meeting, can we, in a special meeting?
You would have to make a motion at the end of your regular meeting to continue this meeting at a date and time, either to be set at that moment or to be set in the future. As long as you note it and then make the announcement within 48 hours of that meeting, we can have a special meeting.
Talk about what's supposed to-
Correct. We would just pick up the agenda where we left off.
Navier, how long do we think this spending freeze is going to be in effect?
At this time, it would be for the rest of the year.
Calendar years.
The school year, until we can cover the significant change in our spending that we noted during the budget audit committee, which is near $90,000 in excess of what we budgeted for because of some changes in choice for medical benefits. We know those medical benefits will continue all year, so we have to either recoup that cost and then we can alleviate the spending freeze, or more prudently, we would recoup that cost through the freeze and continue the freeze so we don't go back into any type of debt. So I would say safely the remainder of the school year.
All right. Last question. Well, maybe not last question. Maybe somebody's got more questions. When we have a special meeting, as long as it falls within the normal janitorial hours, there's no additional cost.
I do want to emphasize the spending freeze is there with very specific purpose. We are not going to freeze on instruction. So if there's something that's needed for the students in the classroom, it does not apply to them. We want to make sure that our teachers have what they need to teach. But if there's something that's outside of the main base of that instruction, we may have to say no. There is also the opportunity to offer overtime if it's needed. Again, basketball season, we know it's needed. And there's also an opportunity to allow for certain expenditures to occur that may not be instructional related, but important to our safety and security.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Opposed? That was you, Frank?
Yeah.
Abstain? Okay, so we will not be allowing overtime for regular, special, or emergency meetings.
I thought we voted for.
No, we're voting to not allow. That's the motion Beth made.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So Frank is a yes. He misunderstood what we were voting on. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to our next motion, if someone could make that, please.
I make a motion to approve the revised 2024, 2025, and 2026, 2027 Board of Education meeting calendars as presented.
Our second?
I would just like to point out that the reason for the changes is to add the budget workshop meeting in December, which had been requested by this board in the past. So it was inadvertently omitted. So we want to make sure it's there so that we have a good handle on the budgets going forward in the next couple of years.
I want to respectfully correct the chair. It wasn't inadvertently overted. It was requested after we had already voted on these calendars. We're so far ahead in our calendars that we had these already approved when the request was made. So I just want to be clear that if we had the request at the time that we voted on these, it would have been added.
Thank you for that correction.
Yes.
All right. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. And the last item on my report is the CABE resolution committee feedback. I could have a motion.
Steve Carr, vote to approve the revised Cape resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, so as you recall, we put forward this resolution regarding digital citizenship to CABE to have at the upcoming delegate assembly in November. And when the resolution committee looked at our resolution, they were concerned about the word mandated in it. So they have asked that we consider taking the word mandated out. And if we were to do that, then they would be willing to support that and put that forward as part of their resolution package. So I would respectfully ask that you vote to approve this minor change so that we can get this resolution into their lobbying efforts for the upcoming legislative year in 2026. Any questions?
So we get to get rid of the word mandate?
We get to get rid of that word, yes. We don't know what the state will do with that.
Pending approval from majority. Nate, Ms. Lane.
That is the meaning of we.
You might get rid of the word, but that doesn't mean it's still around for that to happen. No, I know.
Anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. And that concludes my report this evening.
This is Francine. I'm making my report first with correspondence. As you can see, under 10-1-1, we had a number of correspondence plus our Parent Square correspondence that went out since our last meeting. I'm asking the Board of Education to vote to acknowledge my correspondence per policy 2131 as presented.
Steve Carr, vote to acknowledge the superintendent's correspondence per policy 2131 as presented.
Nate Viera, second.
Any questions?
I have a question. The correspondence that comes into the Board of Ed's general email that goes to the board members, does that get added to the agenda?
Oh, we haven't added that to the agenda.
I was just thinking about that.
If that's a suggestion, we can do that.
When we all get from public comments, yeah.
Want our responses and questions to be added to, or just the response to?
Just the correspondence.
Including the emails for our questions, you mean, or just the response to?
The board con.
Okay, I thought that was going to be, the response was available.
That's the response to public participation meeting currently, correct, but it's not.
Because the law says that if we're sharing something at a meeting, it needs to be shared with the public, and the board receives those form submissions outside of this meeting, I don't think we've ever contemplated putting it here. There's nothing that prohibits us, but there's nothing that obligates us.
Privacy issue in regards to the submission.
There would be some redaction that would have to happen, I would assume.
I was just thinking about it. And my second question, this is just in response to, well, correspondence, but also public participation. The response goes out to whoever speaks during public comment comes from Roxy. Is there ever a point where anything needs to be discussed or deliberated with the board for concurrence of the answer?
Policy states that I am the person to respond, so want to revise that out, have somebody else responding.
It's not that you are not the one to respond, but it's just if it requires a discussion amongst the board.
So for example, I'll give you an example to maybe help the board understand. So if someone came and made a public comment and said, you should paint room 100 blue. We can't make a comment during the meeting. We respond in a letter saying, thank you for your comment. And then the board says, we'd like to discuss the matter of painting room 100 blue. We can put that as an item on the agenda for discussion after the fact. So that way you could have your public discussion, your out loud discussion, the meeting after.
That was my,
Yes, trying to keep it
Thank
neutral.
you.
I have a question. I see 2 overdue invoices for the Opera House. What are those? Why are they overdue?
So the Opera House used our facilities in the summer last year when they were shut down and being renovated. And when we gave them a quote for the use of the facilities, having to have custodians here much longer than the typical day that they're here in the summer, because our custodians work earlier in the summer, the night shifters come to the day. The head of the Opera House approached me and asked if there could be a way to barter those services so that they could provide us with services instead of cash for the use of our facility. So we made a list of what things should be done, and then we compared it to what had been actually done, and we created an invoice of what was still owed to us. And the second invoice, there's another bill that is related to utilizing an order, same kind of a thing where they would promise to barter with us for services. Either way, I had a conversation with the executive director who said that they do not have the money. That's why they're overdue, because they don't have the funds to pay us. And they were trying to assure me that all of the services had been rendered. And I am still debating that with the executive director. So I'm confident that if we don't get the funds, we will at least get the services that we were expecting, most specifically for our productions this year. Anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. The next section of my report is the correspondence to the superintendent or the Board of Education. Good number of really nice thank you cards in there that I hope the board took the time to look at. And then I have some reports. The first report is the annual report that we get from our staff at Black Rock School who do reading recovery. 18% of our first grade was serviced by reading recovery this past year, and the successes of that program are noted in their report. And then there's the Connecticut Early Start Purchase Agreement and the agency vendor form that I've brought to your attention in a separate memo that I'm asking you to take action on tonight. In a nutshell, this is a new requirement by the state on us. And when I first looked at this agreement, it was quite strict, inclusive of levels of liability that were beyond the typical scope of what's expected of a Board of Education. So when presenting my concerns to the Board of Education attorney, he provided me with the response that I shared with the board prior to this meeting. And now that you've had a chance to review, I'm asking that you take action either to direct me to execute the grant requirements or not execute the grant requirements. Please know that we don't know the exact number of dollars that will come from the execution of this requirement. It's an up to amount. We could receive up to $36,000 in eligible expenses for the Early Start program or young children at Black Rock School. It's really a matter of course. According to the people at the State Department of Education, Thomaston is the only holdout. Everyone else just simply signed it. I read our contracts before I sign them.
So in terms of this agreement, this is a mandate, this is required, or it's not? Because we've had,
It's required so that we can become eligible to receive up to $36,000 in funds from the state.
and what's the, other than 36 grand that as per the agreement we might get? So we've had unfunded mandates before. This is a maybe funded mandate. What costs do we incur?
Right now, there would be no cost that we would incur except if the state is called for an audit. Then we, as a Board of Ed, would have to pay for our own audit and submit that information to the state on behalf of the state, instead of the state coming down and auditing books for the districts that receive these funds.
So this is potentially a pay for the state.
It is
Man.
potentially a way to offset the cost of accounting for the state. And then if there's any complaint that's related to these funds that cause the state to identify a liability, we, as a Board of Education, would suffer through whatever liability expenses the state may also have. They can put those upon us. Those were the two key things that gave me pause when I read the contract, Nate, that I didn't like, but they are standard protocol in state agreements. They have just never pushed this type of agreement onto districts for this tiny amount of money.
And should this be voted down, what are the consequences from the state?
The consequences would be that we would be ineligible for up to $36,000 worth of funds related to this very specific grant. So it should not affect any other grant. But I was warned that more and more grants will have this type of form attached to it. So we should be ready to sign these forms in the future if we choose not to sign them now. They're really not going to change. There was no negotiating this form at all.
Yeah, that was made clear very well towards the very beginning of the form that nothing could be changed. It's as written as final.
So I believe that I've done my due diligence to advise the board in giving you this memo that outlines what I thought and also was concurred, the attorney concurred of what the issues would be, but the ultimate decision is up to the board. And the attorney did say, basically, if you don't sign it, you're not going to get your money. If you do sign it, there are some risks, but the risks are in the future.
And you
I got assurance from our staff, knowing that we have a 1-day-a-week business manager. I received assurance from our staff that they can manage the record keeping for this. So we shouldn't put ourselves into jeopardy through our own actions. But I just thought it was a very long document to
If
sign
ever
for this.
audited because of that process, that would add a lot more.
Say that again, Steve?
If we didn't have someone like Tracy or someone that's preparing all of those records in the event of an audit, now there's everyone brought into that, and that I think could actually extend that expense for an audit if we were to be brought in on it.
If we were to sign this agreement, if you were to direct me tonight to sign the agreement, Tracy and I will meet to set up a way of making sure that we, based on the information we have right now, gather information now as we're moving through the use of this grant money, if we get it, so that we have a pre-audit type file, so that it doesn't waste time for us or cost us extra hours of work. Because it would also be our accounts payable person that would have to maintain this as a separate and segregated pot of money, which will make the audit easier if we were to ever be.
Well, if we sign this, we might get $2,000,
Correct. But you might get up to
up to 36.
$36,000.
This is like we're gonna just take a chance with this.
You are taking a chance that Little Bears University, also known as our preschool, may be eligible for up to the maximum amount.
The word up to is kind of,
Up to is
Up
the,
to,
is the operative there.
and since we're such a small district,
It could be
could be nothing.
down
Yes,
from up to.
so. And it's not gonna go up. That'll be per year.
Per
whatever-
year,
whatever
that's
they
what
decide.
they're saying for eligible expenses, yes.
I'm not in that big favor of this because it's kind of could cause more problems. It costs a lot more money in the future.
Well, like I said, I'll give you that warning again. The state has said that more and more grants are going to come with this obligation in the future. So if we don't sign this one, it could be our first, drawing a line in the sand, but we may we might be forced into it for larger grants that we really depend on and that are part of our budgeted revenue.
Francine, Steve Carr, would this potentially open up seats for that program for our community?
What it would do is it would allow us to buy down some of the expenses that are eligible in that preschool. So the expenses would be related to what we pay out.
Which would affect the overall budget.
Yes, it would improve the budget by whether it's Frank's example of 2,000 or the up to amount of 36,000.
One more question. So if we don't sign this, we're still eligible for other ones coming up.
Yes.
I agree with Frank. I don't like this. I mean, it should be a surprise. I don't like this. I mean, this is a new kind of precedent. They're dangling a little bit of money in front of us, hoping that we jump. And this is maybe 36. It could be 0, and then we still have the liability. I mean, if other things, and I understand that this is probably going to be the new norm.
Yes.
This is probably going to be the new norm. But this isn't even a promise. This is a maybe.
Remember that the state needs money. So this would be a maybe to open up the way that them gets more money out of us.
No, and I understand that. But I mean, it's a big move from them. They've gone from promising to, oh, we're going to use this eloquent language and give you this deal that you can't even negotiate. And then you might get something out of it. But if we encounter a rainy day, you guys are flipping the cost. No, I agree with you, Frank. It's not.
I guess my only question or comment on the issue is if they're all going to start to fall into this type of language. At some point, if we would like funding from the state, which we need because we can't fund ourselves, that we're going to have to say yes. So I would rather not flip a coin with our pre-K program, which we're already lottering kids in and out of, and we don't have enough seats to currently fill. So if we're ever looking to expand that program, taking a hard line and biting our thumb because we don't know what the amount is going to be, every dollar that we can get is a dollar that we didn't have. And my personal preference and passion about it is I think our pre-K program is amazing. I think it's one of the best ones maybe in all of Connecticut. So anything that we can do to support the amazing staff that we already have there and fund anything that they would like to do in any way that we can, I think might be worth the risk, especially if it's a risk we're going to have to take 6 months from now for a bigger grant, for a bigger, you know what I mean? If this was the only one, and it made a sense for us to die on this hill, then okay, you can weigh it out. But if it's going to turn into this, no matter what, if we want funding, then I'd rather get whatever we can get for a program that we're passionate about rather than choose this hill to be the hill we die on.
I think also a key point is this is specific for this program and it entitles it to just these specific eligibilities. So for future ones, we would still have the option to choose to sign. We're not open pen, authorizing every single thing that comes across there. This is specific to this particular grant from the state, correct?
Yes,
This
that's
will
why I
not
suggest the
extend-
motion be written this way so that it's specific to only the early start grant.
Right. So that's, we're not standing on a hill. We're digging the trench around it to show that this is the hill that we're standing on. So if there are any questions, I'll do a motion.
So I say, and that's why I think that's a very good point with our preschool system, where we're at in terms of funding. Money's not growing on trees here, but when you're dangling a 36 grand carrot and you got a big liability stick, let's not forget right now we're entering into a feasibility study. We're going to have opportunities to expand our pre-K, make more opportunities to expand the number of seats potentially through the number of outcomes that could come from that study. I don't think it's a good idea to lock ourselves in, set the precedent, and start just going along to get along. Like, look, if the carrot was bigger, I think we'd have more of a, at least in my opinion, can't speak for the whole board, in my opinion, would put some more thought into it. But we're talking about 36, and it's not even 36. It could be 2 to Frank's point, and the liability over time could be over that. And if I think it's a good precedent to set. If you want us to bite, give us more.
I'd be more concerned with the bigger carrot, to be honest with you, because it's kind of the pay no attention to
same.
the man behind the curtain
No, and I
kind of
understand that.
mentality.
I understand that, but if the strings are the same, like, look, if we even got a guarantee, a floor guarantee, which we can't touch this at all. We're just yes or no. So if you're going to just give us that ultimatum, not even give us a floor to the amount of money we could get, the ceiling's 36, by all technicality, your bottom dollar is 1 penny. I say kick rocks.
I'd be corrected on this if it were to be made, for example, per year of eligible expenses specifically related to Little Bear University preschool program. Can we amend that ask?
It's listed, you mean how it's written on the agenda? It says to the Little Bears, because that's our preschool program.
Right, what I'm saying specific to, in other words, so that we truly do draw a trench around this hill.
I'm sorry, Steve, I don't understand your question.
We're saying that this is specifically for this Little Bear program.
Yes,
Um,
because that's all that qualifies for this money.
okay, and okay, so yeah, it doesn't need to be because it's already in the
Yeah,
agreement.
it's only meant for early start, which would be preschool.
Okay.
Another question I have, would this grant come up again in the future for us to vote on?
Yes,
Okay, so if we vote no, and we see that other towns in similar size, this isn't a kind of grant to where they're only actually paying attention to the cities like they usually do, as the state usually does, then we could reconsider at that point and also see what kind of liabilities that they concur, working with partners in the general area and of general comparable size and district?
Yes, I didn't see anything in the contract that indicated that if we didn't sign it in year one, that we would become ineligible in years 2 and forward. So, I can say that that was not written in the contract, but one never knows, Nate,
No, of course.
what one will get if they cooperate or don't cooperate with the state.
I just want to say I've written and filled out many grants before, and this is similar to a couple of grants that I have personally filled out. It is nothing new, some of this wording, and it's nothing new. It's just new to the state, I think. But if you're looking in private sector, there's some of these kind of grants out there. And if you have never filled them out, then you would have never have seen stuff like this. So I just want to put that out there.
And I would like to reemphasize the statement that's at the tail end of the memo that I sent to you. The quote from our attorney is, it ends with the district must assess its capacity to manage compliance and potential liabilities. I'm telling you, our staff has provided me with assurance in writing that they can manage this grant, be it a penny or 36,000. So it will not be an issue for us to be compliant with the language. The risk is what may happen at the state level that could trickle down to us.
Matt Van Ormer, I vote to direct the superintendent of schools to execute the early start CT purchase of service agreement and the required agency vendor form in order to enable the state to reimburse Thomaston Public Schools up to $36,000 per year for eligible expenses related to Little Bear University preschool program.
Our second.
Any further questions or discussion?
Question. If we were to get this money, would that expand the preschool?
No, there's not enough money to expand the preschool.
That's right, because we also have to keep in mind, there's businesses in town, we're gonna decimate them by expanding the preschool. And not that I don't care about either one, but we gotta think about that too. These businesses are gonna be decimated, and Thomaston doesn't need to have business decimated. We need more we need more pre-K, but you gotta look at both.
Even at the
sides.
highest amount, Frank, there would not be enough money. It wouldn't even be a third of what we would need to open another classroom in our school.
This grant also, correct?
I did not look into whether privates could apply. I'm sorry. This is just what we were told we could do as a public school district.
Okay. All those in favor of directing the superintendent of schools to execute this?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Any abstaining? Good, Michelina. Thank you. Next, we have a motion regarding the Thomaston Public Schools Food Service Employee Handbook.
Steve Carr, vote to accept and approve the Thomaston Public School Food Service Employee Handbook as presented.
Here a second.
Do you have any questions or concerns regarding this? In front of us, we have the major changes that were made. Okay.
Also revamped this last year too. Correct?
Yes, it was fully updated last year to include some new information, but we caught these as we went through the year, inclusive of the reference to collect calls, which I don't think anyone knows how to make anymore.
Thanks.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
You have the links to the administrative reports for July and August. We had no residency items, no student discipline items. We did have one homeschooling request. And then the enrollment report, as you know, in the summer, we don't update it. If there's any transfers between June 1st and September 1st, it'll be updated at the next meeting. Under personnel, we have a number of staff because this is that time of the year where we either have new staff coming on board or we're assigning stipend positions. So without going through the lengthy list, I will ask the board to please acknowledge my notification of personnel per policy 4112, 4212 as presented.
Steve Carr, vote to acknowledge the superintendent's notification of personnel per policy 4112, 4212, personnel, certified, non-certified appointment and conditions of employment as presented.
Here a second.
Any questions or concerns?
I have a question just to make sure I remain consistent. There's a lot of names on here. I've probably scrolled through this about 4 times. We have no administrators as coaches, right?
We have no administrators as coaches.
Okay, just want to make sure.
We have an athletic director who is a coach, but not a school administrator.
Good to go. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else?
Just for some of the stipend positions that are have been posted. Do they all need to be filled if we're in this spending freeze? Are they all instructional? And I didn't even know we had a debate team.
So the debate team stipend was a request, I think more than, it might be 2 years ago, it might have been just this past year. And it was done through a memorandum of agreement because we'd never had such a thing before. We don't have anyone that seems to be interested in that, so I'm not concerned with that. But there are stipends year over year that don't get filled because there's just no interest in either that advisory position or that facilitation position. There are some, there's one in particular, the school climate coordinator. That's a mandated position. So we have to fill that position. And at this time, we have no applicants for that position. So I will be actively recruiting in the next so many weeks so that we can fill that position.
Correct me if is that the one that we voted on the other month? That's okay. Just want to make sure. Sound familiar?
I had emailed earlier about there were a few of these that had 2, like science club. I'm only asking from a budget standpoint if we, require to have 2 for a few of the ones that had 2 lists.
Sure. So Science Club has a memorandum of agreement that if there is to be more than one, they split it. And it's delineated in that memorandum. There are times when we have 2 of the same type of a position. An example would be webmaster. We need 1 in every building plus the 1 for the district. And reflections reviewer is another one where we need multiples. And I want to highlight the reflections reviewer. Reflections reviewers are listed as reviewers, but not paid until or unless they complete a reflection. So if we have a brand new teacher coming to the district who needs to have a reflection reviewer reading their documents that get sent to the state, then we assign one of those people on that list to do the job. And we make sure that they have no relationship with them, no conflict of interest with them. Like if they were a student teacher relationship, you don't want them to also be next year the reflections reviewer. So you may see some multiples under reflections reviewer. None of those people will get paid unless there is an actual need for a reflection. Yes. And reflections reviewers are partially reimbursed from the state.
I have a question. I know this is just ridiculous, but like all the coaches, is there any way we can put like a set number of practices and games that they're gonna have? And then if something gets rained out, it gets deducted. I mean, I don't know, somebody to save some money. Because a lot of games get rained out, practices get rained out.
I appreciate your suggestion, Frank, but I would like you to look at it conversely. So if we are a winningest team and we go beyond the Berkshire League division and the season is extended and we get to Mohegan Sun, do we pay more? So it balances out in the end if you look at it both ways.
Along the coach line, just my comment would be, is it necessary to have the freshman coaches continue?
The people on this agenda who are assigned to these stipends were already assigned to the stipends and have already begun the work. So if we were to consider laying them off from that work, we would be shutting down those teams or those parts of teams after the fact. So they'd get some type of partial pay and then we would lay them off.
I have actually a piggyback question on that. What if there's not enough kids? Then you lay them off from that?
So if there aren't enough, so let's say I'll use cheerleading as an example because we didn't have enough cheerleaders last year.
Yeah.
So we would have hired a coach and then the coach wouldn't have had a team and we would have told the coach, you're not getting paid because they haven't done anything. But if we've got a coach that's already started doing the work, you know, if you're saying you don't want a freshman basketball person, well, then we need to know that now so we can tell that freshman basketball person that they can't run that team. But I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get to $90,000 by letting go of these coaches. And I think you're going to. My advice would be to be very careful where you tread with that because you also don't want to disappoint the students that are participating in those sports. And remember, we just recently expanded to sixth grade last year so that we would grow our athletics program. So I hope that you would consider that commitment that we've made to the students through athletics.
And I think this is the first time ever that since I've been on the board that we've hired all the coaches for all 3 seasons at the beginning of the year. And I just am excited that we're going to be implementing the survey this year so we can get feedback.
Mhm.
Okay, that'll be great.
And I'd like to give credit to our athletic director and our high school principal for making sure that that happened this year. It is, I agree with you, Beth. It was very refreshing to see that we have our coaches in place.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Our discussion is over. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm abstaining, Michelina, because my daughter is one of many coaches. Thank you.
My report continues with 2 requests for family medical leave. We have no new interns or student teachers to make note of on this agenda. We have a request to revise the dates of our Washington DC field trip that the board has already approved. It was determined that it would be during a school holiday, so they moved the dates. And before we go into that motion, I'll just finish up field trips with the annual trip to the Big E for our seniors. So I ask that the Board of Education at this time approve the revised dates of the grade 8 Washington DC field trip as presented.
You have a new student representative.
You like the DC trip?
Yeah, DC trip.
Okay. So that's a yes for me.
We need a motion before we start.
Well, it will be, once a motion is set forward. Where is it? You got it, Steve?
Got it. Steve Carr, vote to approve the revised dates of the grade 8 Washington DC field trip, March 24th to 2026 to March 27th, 2027, as presented.
Nate Beer, second.
You know, you want to press out to Steve, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said 2027.
Yeah.
Sorry. That was almost one heck of a field trip. Steve Carr, revise motion, vote to approve the revised dates of the grade 8 Washington DC field trip, March 24th, 2026 to March 27th, 2026, as presented.
Nate Beer, second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
I ask that the Board of Education approve the grade 12 Big E field trip to Westfield, Massachusetts in September as presented.
Nate Beer, I make a motion to vote to approve the grade 12 Big E West Springfield, Massachusetts, September 18th, 2025 field trip as presented.
Steve Carr, second.
I'll ask you again, you want to go to Big E?
Yeah.
Okay.
Deal.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
There were 3 requests for the sales or disposal of books, equipment, and supplies. That's self-explanatory on my report. And that concludes my report.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the disposal of the gas stove from center school, is that one of the gas stoves that was given to the ambulance corps of the fire department? They each got one from the district. I'm not sure if that's one of them.
Oh, I don't know. This is the gas stove that we use to cook lunches, like the big cafeteria stove. It's a big old stove. Do you want me to check on that, Beth, to confirm? I don't know if anybody has any record of that. I'll check. But it's no longer functioning and it doesn't have the proper safety mechanisms to code. So a stove is on order and it will be replaced. We're hoping to get it done before our big dumpster leaves center schools so that it doesn't cost us extra to remove that stove.
For that is coming from. That's just,
Food service department has their own budget and they are self-sustaining. They also receive some grant money. So food service is paying for that new stove. It is not coming out of the Board of Ed operating budget or out of town capital.
Okay, moving into our committee reports. I'll turn it over to Mr. Carr for the treasurer's report.
Steve Carr, we met for the budget audit committee meeting last Wednesday. Expenditures for the month, $2,316,096.83.
That was just June?
That was up until
Yeah, there's one in July and one in June.
yes, okay, yes, sorry, reading for this, for June. Right. It's okay, that was for June. For July, meeting expenditures for the month, $1,353,488.06. We had discussed the overage that would cause the freeze or the discussion for the freeze. And other than that, vote to approve the business and finance report and expenditures per policy 3432, 3433, business non-instructional operations, budget and expense report, annual financial statements as presented for both June 2025 and July 2025.
Vera, second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Mr. Van Ormer, you got the policy committee?
We had the most delightful policy committee meeting we've ever had. Right before this, because we're done in 25 minutes. We revisited the armed security guard policy and policy changes that we need to make. We're going to table that, and then if it comes back up as another interest that we think we can factor into the budget, we will put it back into the policy committee, and then we will revisit that. But for the time being, we're going to set it aside. We had 2 first reads, which will move to second reads, which is policy 1140 and policy 1311.2. And then we just have 1 action item we'll be voting on tonight. And that is vote to approve policy 1327, community relations with youth organizations as presented.
Vera, second.
Questions or concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Steve Carr, vote to adjourn.
Second.
Well, Beth made the motion, so.
Second. Whichever one it was, I think.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Thank you all for attending. Have a great night.